Do you find your students staring out the window during lesson time? Or maybe even you? It's really hard to be stuck inside when the weather is so gorgeous outside, isn't it? I'll be sharing 10 easy outdoor music lesson ideas that are going to keep the excitement high and the boredom low, or maybe better yet, even non-existent. If we haven't met before, I'm Rosemarie from The Unfinished Lesson, and I want it all. I want a life where I can have balance in running my studio and juggling life with twins, while still having time and energy to creatively teach in my studio. The Unfinished Lesson started as my way of helping other independent music teachers and studio owners be able to have balance in their life and creativity in their studio. Because guess what? You can have both. So be sure to watch to the end. I'm going to be highlighting 2 resources that will kind of wrap up what I'm talking about in this video and basically allow you to quickly move lessons outside, whether that's planned or unexpected, without a lot of prep time. Imagine smiles from both your students and their parents as you keep their kids engaged right up until the very last lesson. So these ideas aren't in any particular order. Some of them I use more than others. However, I know that the resources, there are teachers that use them quite a bit. And so these are ways to adapt those resources. I'm also going to explain how to use them in person and online as appropriate. Idea 1, music games. Most games, most physical games can be played outside. So in person, honestly, you're just grabbing a blanket and you're heading out. It's fantastic. You can be under a tree so that there's a little bit of shade and it's really fun. If you're online, it's a little bit harder if it's a physical game because you need to make sure that your student already has a physical copy of it. So this one I would say is a little bit more geared towards in-person lessons. Idea 2, listening activities. So this one actually works quite well, whether you're in person or online. Grab a Bluetooth speaker. That way your phone can stay closer to wherever your Wi-Fi is. And then it's pretty easy. Your student can listen to the music. If you're wanting them to do something a little bit more structured, I used to have my students fill out listening glyphs. So again, this is something you might send beforehand, but even if you teach online, it's pretty easy for a parent to print that off. And then they just have it on hand for when you guys are going to be outside. It was one of our favorite activities when my studio was in person, that my students would come to my house for group lesson, that last one before the holidays. And they loved filling out these listening glyphs as they listened to the music outside. Idea 3, theory worksheets. Now you may be a little surprised that I'm giving you this idea because I tend to say, don't use theory worksheets. There's a time and a place for them. Most of the time, I think we should be teaching theory in other ways, but if you have theory worksheets, this would actually be a great opportunity to use them. There's something about being outside that the worksheet just doesn't feel quite as dreary and as boring. What I would recommend is let your students color on them. Make sure that you tie it into whatever music they are hearing or music that they've already played or will be playing. Though if this is this close to the end of the year or the end of the term, focus on things that they're either listening to in that moment or that they have already played so that you're tying it in a really tangible and practical way, that it isn't just a fluff assignment, as my kids call them. Right, so idea number 4, airplay. So if you can imagine a little air guitar, kind of like that. This is a great one for either in person or online. So what happens is you just get your student to play their scales or a little part of their song in the air. So at one point I was still sort of a travel teacher, but we had a lot of restrictions in our area. So I couldn't, when I traveled to my students' homes, actually play the piano because my student had been on it. And so anyways, it was a whole thing. what I ended up doing, if you can imagine, is instead of being able to play the piano, I either had to use my iPad in GarageBand trying to play the notes so that my student could hear them, or I was playing in the air. Very frustrating. I wouldn't recommend that as a every week teaching thing, but a scale, not a problem. C major scale, you know what? Can you play the scale? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, crossed under the thumb. So just giving it a kind of fun way of doing it, that we've stepped away from the piano or whatever your instrument is, that you're just checking to see how much they're visualizing as they're playing. So idea number 5, flashcards. Again, not one of my favorite things to use in my studio. However, again, there is a time and a place for this. What I would do is I would up the fun factor on this. And I've actually done this with group lessons, both indoors and outdoors. Assign actions if somebody gets it right or if they get it wrong. So for example, one group lesson, if the student got it right, or if one group got it right, then the other team had to do like 2 burpees. And then, you know, if the second team got their answer right, then of course the other team had to do the burpees. Now, if your team got it wrong though, then you had to do the burpees. So this was just a way of having it fun and lighthearted and still active for my students. And so if you're going to use flashcards, just come up with an action. So maybe if they get it right, then you have to do jumping jacks or something like that. Just come up with something that's fun and that's comfortable for both of you. All right, so idea number 6, digital escape rooms. This one, studio favorite by far, both from as a travel teacher as well as now as an online teacher. Now you may be thinking, if I'm outside, how is a digital escape room going to work? It might be a little more challenging. However, I would argue that even if you are sitting just outside the doorway of the front door or the back door, you are still outside. So it doesn't always mean we have to go really far. It could be we're just literally outside the door. If you teach in person, it might be at your home that you're doing this, or travel teacher at your student's home. If you're online, then what I would recommend is just have your student do the digital escape room. They tell you the answers, and then you can check on your side on your device whether or not it's working. And if you're wondering how digital escape rooms work and why they work so well, go ahead and check above. I have a video on how to use digital escape rooms in your music studio. So hopefully that'll help you out. This one option actually is really, really great for music history, which, if we're honest, a lot of us tend to kind of forget to do during the school year. So perfect time, perfect way of just getting a little music history in. Idea number 7, found sounds. So I was inspired by, well, a few things actually, but in particular, as things went on and people were stuck in a lot of Zoom meetings, they would actually sometimes do meetings on their phone as they were going for a walk. And I thought, this is fantastic. Why can't we do this? And so that's actually what I'm recommending is I would recommend FaceTime if you're an online teacher, or you could be in person, in which case you're just physically going for a walk with your student. And just make sure that for younger students, a parent is with. Just that way, you don't worry about any legalities there. But I mean, how often do we just listen to the sounds around us? So just going for a short walk and listening to the sounds that are happening around. It could be birds singing, could be a car, whatever it might be. And then you can talk about those sounds. You can still have a musical conversation. It's just in a different way. So I would highly recommend this one, especially for students that are just feeling like, I can't sit. Please stop making me just sit and do stuff. This is a great option for them. Idea number 8. Listen to music together. So this is a bit of a variation on number 2, which was more active listening. Students were filling out something, whether it was, like a listening glyph or a worksheet. This is more informal. And I would actually recommend, especially with your teens or your preteens, this is a great option. They might have a lot of exams and projects and things going on where they don't have a lot of time to practice. And so this is a great way of just talking about music together. Now, if you're in person, again, just grab that Bluetooth speaker. You can listen to some music outside. You've just got a blanket on the grass, and it's great. On the other hand, if you teach online, what you can actually do is use the share play feature in FaceTime. And so there's a resource I'm going to share at the end of this video that will have a link on how to do that, but you can just share the music and both of you are listening to it as if you're both sharing the same phone. And so it's a really fantastic way of doing that in a relaxed environment. You're still doing a lot of what you did with idea number 2, but it's just pretty chilled out. Right, so idea number 9, adapted games. So in the first one, it was games that were music related, right? Music games. This one, you're adapting other games. So for example, you know those flashcards that I mentioned previously? Well, what you could do is use them as taboo cards. And so just grab the flashcards, mix them up, and get the other person to guess what's on that flashcard without you using any of the words that are related to it. So you could go really specific. So if it was, say, like a staccato, then they can't use the word staccato. Or it could be that they can't use the word staccato, they can't use the word dot. You know what I mean? So you can make this as easy or hard as you would like. But this would be a really fun one. And again, you can just use those flashcards in a different way. Another option, and I would say for maybe your more advanced students, is categories. So it really tests students' knowledge. What I'd recommend is just think about the different categories of music, things we talk about. So it could be things like instruments, it could be eras, genres, it could be things like articulation and dynamics. It could be musical symbols, whatever you want. Just make sure that the categories are pretty broad. What you need is this categories dice. You roll it, and then whatever letter comes up, set a timer and see how many each of you can write down on whatever that topic is. So this could be a fun way of just reviewing just how much do your students and perhaps you remember from the year. So idea number 10, active rhythms. Rhythms, I think, are one of those things that we talk a lot about note reading, but I think students need to recognize rhythms that are written out. There's patterns that show up in music all the time. So what we can do is have them sight read or teach by rote rhythms. There's a few options here. You could give actions for each type of note, and then they have to freeze during the rest. And you're definitely going to need some confidence here. So if you're doing actions, you'll definitely want to make sure that you feel comfortable and your students feel comfortable that you might be in the backyard or the front yard doing all sorts of weird actions. I'm totally fine doing that, but I know not everybody is. Another option would be something like the rhythm warm-ups that get students off the bench. There's rhythms there that are meant to be taught off the bench with different actions. And so it's something I did with my students indoors, but it actually would work really well outdoors. If you're wondering about how to get students active, especially if it's, say, like an online or in a group lesson, then just watch the video above. I've got a few ideas there for you. In terms of active rhythm, if you're feeling a little nervous, I will let you know several years ago, we had a group lesson at my house. And we did the active rhythm and we did the actions. And at the end of it, one of my students was like, well, do you know how to floss? And I knew she didn't mean like cleaning my teeth. It was the dance. And so they tried teaching me. I never really got it down. I mean, I thought so hard and I was thinking, please don't let my neighbors be looking outside right now, because I was doing really bad at it. But you know what? It was a fun moment and it was a bonding moment for my students and I. So just embrace it, have fun with it. As promised, here are 2 resources that will help you get your students and yourself outside for music lessons. Keep in mind that there's a lot of resources I mentioned throughout the video. I'm just going to mention 2 main categories right now. For everything else, just look in the description below. So the first one is actually the companion article to this video. It's called Take It Outside, Easy Outdoor Music Lesson Ideas for Your Music Studio. Now, it has all the ideas I've listed here. However, it goes a little bit more into how to make outdoor lessons work for online lessons in terms of how to introduce it to your clients and make sure that things are set up so it can be successful. If that's something you're interested in, then definitely go check out the article. And if you teach in person, I'd recommend still go over and scan it just so that you get a few of the other ideas that are there. For any of the products that I listed, and this is the second resource idea, just go ahead and check in the description below, or you can head over to the site, to the shop, and they're over there as well. I try to design things so that you don't have a lot of prep time, because I know we all want to save admin time. We want to save the time that we spend planning lessons and just get to the fun stuff. So if that's something you're wanting, then definitely head over there. Otherwise, there's plenty of, ideas on things you can use already within your studio within this video. You're definitely not going to want to miss out on our next series. Be sure to hit the subscribe and like button so that you continue to get ideas and teaching strategies that'll help you out in your studio. Be sure to check out the suggested video. That one, it's going to help you also with keeping your students engaged.